I want you to imagine something for me. Imagine standing outside an airport, not inside, not near a gate, not somewhere comfortable, but outside, on the curb in the afternoon heat, surrounded by strangers who all have somewhere to go. Imagine watching the car that brought you there pull away from the curb, slowly at first, then faster. And the man driving it, the man you have spent 3 years of your life loving, trusting, building quiet dreams with, he does not look back. Not once. He does not check his mirror. He does not slow down. He simply drives away. And you are standing there with 2 suitcases, a handbag pressed against your side, and a return ticket you have never personally looked at, because he booked everything. He always booked everything. And you trusted him enough to never check. That is exactly where my story begins. Not with anything cinematic, not with a dramatic scene or raised voices or something you might see in a film, just a car pulling away from a curb. And me standing there watching it disappear. My name is Nomvula Grace Dlamini. I am from Durban, South Africa. I am 51 years old, and I have spent a long time deciding whether to tell this story publicly. But something happened to me at OR. Tambo International Airport in Johannesburg that I believe needs to be told. Not because I want sympathy, not because I want anyone to feel sorry for me, but because what happened that day, the betrayal, the humiliation, and then something else entirely, something I still find difficult to fully describe, changed the direction of my life. And I think it might speak to someone watching this right now, someone who has been left behind by someone they trusted, someone standing at their own curb, watching a car drive away. This is for you. I need to go back just far enough so you understand how I got to that curb. I work in hospital administration. 22 years in the public health system, managing patient records, coordinating departments, making sure the complicated business of a large hospital runs smoothly behind the scenes. Nobody makes films about women like me, but it is important work, and I have always been proud of it. I had never been in a truly serious relationship until I met Desmond Koza. I was 48 when we met. He was 53. I know what some people might think. At her age, she should have known better, but love does not come with an age limit on vulnerability. When someone makes you feel seen, truly seen, after years of feeling invisible, you open your heart. That is not foolishness. That is just being human. I met Desmond at a medical conference in Cape Town. He worked in medical equipment supply, sales representative for a company distributing equipment to hospitals across southern Africa. That is how our worlds intersected. He was well-dressed, not flashy but neat. He had good manners. He called older women mama and older men baba. He laughed easily but not loudly. He held doors open. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He came and sat beside me at lunch on the second day. He asked about my work. He asked about Durban. He asked if I had children, and when I said no, he did not make a pitying face the way some people do. He just nodded and said, "Then you have given 22 years of yourself to other people's families. That is its own kind of devotion." I thought, who says something like that? Who even thinks that way? By the end of the conference, he had asked for my number. He called the very next evening, not a text, an actual phone call. He talked to me for an hour and a half about nothing particularly important, and by the time I put the phone down, I was smiling in a way I had not smiled in a very long time. For the first year, it was wonderful. He was attentive and consistent. He came to Durban most weekends. He brought simple things, a book he thought I would enjoy, a specific fruit he knew I liked. Once a small carved wooden elephant that he said reminded him of me because elephants never forget what matters. He met my mother. She liked him. My mother was not a woman who liked everyone easily. That meant something. But there was one moment early on that I filed away without examining. We were discussing a restaurant bill and he made a comment, almost under his breath, about how money moved too slowly in his life. I asked what he meant. He smiled and said, "Nothing." Forget it, I forgot it, I should have remembered it. In the second year, things began to shift. Slowly. So slowly I almost did not notice. His work became complicated, he said. His company was restructuring. Clients were not paying on time. He became quieter, less present, even when physically in the room. He canceled 2 visits in a row with short notice. He forgot the anniversary of my mother's passing. He had always remembered before. He borrowed money from me twice, once a smaller amount, once more significant. Both times he said it was temporary. He would repay me within the month. He did not repay me within the month. When I gently mentioned it, he became slightly wounded, as though I was being unkind by remembering. I felt guilty for bringing it up. I now understand that is a pattern I should have recognized. But I pushed the worry down. I told myself that good men go through difficult seasons. I told myself that relationships require patience. These are the things we tell ourselves. In the middle of the 3rd year, he suggested a trip to Johannesburg. A business opportunity, he said. A contract with a private hospital group in Sandton. If it came through, it would change everything. For him, for us, he wanted me there. He said, "Nomi, I want you beside me when things turn around. I want you to be the person I celebrate with." I took 4 days off work. I packed carefully. I was genuinely hopeful. We flew to Johannesburg together. We stayed in a hotel in Sandton, nicer than I expected, given everything he had said about financial pressure. When I mentioned this, he smiled and said, "Business credit card." I need to make a good impression. I let it go. The first 2 days were almost like old times. We walked through Sandton. We had a long, relaxed dinner. He held my hand across the restaurant table and looked at me in that particular way he had, as though I was the most interesting woman in the room. I called my sister Tandy back home and told her things seemed good. She was cautious in her response. Tandy has always seen Desmond more clearly than I have. She said, "Just be careful, Nomi. Come home safe." I told her she worried too much. That was the afternoon before everything collapsed. On the 4th and final morning, we were supposed to check out and fly home together. That was what he had told me. He had managed all the bookings from the beginning, flights, hotel, everything. I had never personally looked at the ticket. He would tell me the time I would show up. That is how it had always worked between us because he insisted on handling it, and I had trusted him enough to let him. I woke up early. I showered. I dressed. I packed my 2 suitcases neatly. Desmond was already up, which was unusual. He was dressed, sitting at the small desk near the window, looking at his phone with his back slightly turned. But when he heard me, he turned and smiled, and whatever tension I thought I had seen vanished. "Ready," he said. "Almost," I said. We went downstairs. We put our luggage in a taxi. He sat beside me and was on his phone for most of the journey. I looked out the window at Johannesburg sliding past and thought about going home, about my own bed, about the work waiting for me on Monday. I was not sensing danger. I was simply tired and ready to go home. We arrived at the departure terminal. He paid the taxi driver. He got out. He lifted my 2 suitcases from the boot and stood them on the pavement beside me. And then he said, and I will never forget this as long as I live, "Nomi, I am not getting on that plane." I looked at him. "What do you mean?" "I am not going back to Durban. I am sorry. I should have told you sooner. I could not find the right time." I said very calmly, "Desmond, what are you talking about?" And then he told me. Standing at the curb of one of the busiest airports in Africa, with people swirling around us and taxis hooting and announcements playing from somewhere inside, he told me. The business contract had never been a real business contract. He had come to Johannesburg to see someone else, a woman he had been involved with for 8 months. He was staying. He was staying with her. He said he was sorry. He said he had not planned for things to develop this way. He said he hoped I could understand eventually. And then he said something that still tightens my chest when I remember it. "The hotel room, Nomi, it is on your card. I gave them your card at check-in. I was going to explain. I am sorry. I will pay you back." I just looked at him. I felt as though the ground had tilted 30 degrees and no one else had noticed. He picked up his one small bag, just the one I saw that now, and called a taxi on his phone. When it arrived, he got in. The taxi pulled away from the curb. He did not look back, not once. I stood there for what felt like a very long time. The world kept moving around me. Families with children, business travelers, couples, airport staff in their uniforms, everyone going somewhere. Everyone with a destination. And me, standing between two suitcases that suddenly felt like the heaviest things on earth. I did not cry, not immediately. I think I was too stunned to cry. Finally, with hands that were not quite steady, I opened my handbag and found the ticket. I looked at the date. I looked at it again. And then I closed my eyes. The return flight was the following day, not today. He had booked me on a flight for tomorrow, and never told me, so that I would not argue at the hotel, so I would not cause a scene. So he could simply drive away, and leave me to figure the rest out alone. He had given the hotel my card, without telling me, which meant I had already paid for a room I had just vacated. And now I needed somewhere to sleep tonight with a card that was carrying more than it should. I sat down on top of one of my suitcases, not gracefully, just sat down. Because my legs were not willing to hold me anymore, I do not know how long I sat there. Long enough for a security officer to walk past me twice and look at me with professional concern that stopped just short of intervening. Long enough for a woman with a small child to glance at me, slow her steps, and then keep moving. Long enough for the afternoon to begin leaning toward evening and the quality of the light to change around me. I was going through the numbers in my head. Another night in a hotel. The depleted card. The flight tomorrow. I knew I needed to move. I knew it logically, but I could not make myself do it yet. And in that still, hollow moment, I heard a voice. Not loud, not intrusive, just present. "Excuse me, are you all right?" I looked up. A man was standing a few feet from me. Older, I would have guessed late 60s. He was dressed simply, dark trousers. A plain pale blue shirt, open at the collar. A light jacket of the kind that men of a certain age tend to favor. No uniform, no name badge, nothing that announced him as anything in particular. He was not tall, but he had a quality of stillness about him that made him seem larger than he was. And he was holding a small takeaway coffee cup, holding it, I noticed, without drinking from it. Just carrying it, the way you carry something you picked up and then forgot about. His face was kind. Not handsome, not unhandsome, just kind. The face of a man who has lived long enough to stop performing anything. I said, "I am fine, thank you," which was not true at all. He looked at me for a moment, not intrusively, just he looked. Then he said, "You do not look fine, and I say that with respect, not to be rude." I almost laughed, just barely. "I have had a difficult afternoon," I said. He nodded slowly. "I have had a few of those myself." He did not push further. He did not sit down uninvited. He simply stood there, holding his coffee cup without drinking from it, looking at the cars moving through the pickup lane as though he had all the time in the world. After a moment he said, "Are you waiting for someone, or waiting for something to become clearer?" I looked up at him again. That was such a precise question. I said, "The second one." He nodded. Those are often the longest waits. We were quiet for a moment. Then I heard myself say, and I am not sure why I said it to a complete stranger, "My flight is tomorrow. I thought it was today. I have nowhere to sleep tonight and less money than I expected. And the person who was supposed to be with me is not here anymore." He did not react with pity. He did not make sympathetic noises. He just listened. When I finished, he said simply, "That is a great deal to absorb all at once." "Yes," I said. "My name is Solomon," he said. "I am Nomvula," I said. "Where are you from, Nomvula?" "Durban," I said. "Beautiful city," he said. "Do you need a ride?" I thought about caution. I thought about common sense. I looked at him, this older man with his pale blue shirt and his still, honest eyes and the coffee cup he had been carrying for several minutes without drinking from, and I thought about what I actually saw. Not a threat, not a performance, just a person offering something real. "You are very kind," I said, "but I cannot ask that of you." "You did not ask," he said quietly. I offered. "There is a difference." I considered that. "I do not even know where I am going," I said. "Then we will figure that out," he said. "Come, I will get your bags." His car was not what I expected. I do not know exactly what I expected. Something modest, perhaps, to match the modest clothing. It was a dark gray sedan. Large, quiet, clearly expensive, though not flashy in any obvious way. Clean inside with the kind of clean that speaks of long, careful maintenance. He lifted my heavier suitcase as though it weighed nothing. He loaded both into the boot with quiet efficiency, held the passenger door open, and got in beside me. He started the car. As the dashboard illuminated, a notification appeared briefly on the built-in screen. A small logo in the corner, a stylized bird shape, before the screen returned to navigation. I recognized it. Or thought I did. It looked like the logo used by Southerly Air, the regional airline I had flown with before. Many people in Durban had. I thought perhaps he worked for them. Perhaps it was a sponsored app. I filed it away and thought nothing more of it. He drove without rushing. Johannesburg moved around us, complicated and dense and alive. I sat in the passenger seat and felt the afternoon's shock beginning to settle into something heavier. Not dramatic grief. Just that deep, quiet ache of something broken that cannot be quickly repaired. Solomon did not try to fill every silence. He seemed to understand that sometimes silence is the kindest offering. But after a while he said, gently, "You do not have to tell me what happened, but if you want to talk, I am not going anywhere." And I told him, not every detail, just the shape of it, 3 years. The trip, the hotel card, the curb, the car driving away. He listened the whole time. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I am sorry that happened to you." Just that. No advice, no analysis, no what were you thinking or you should have seen the signs. Just, "I am sorry that happened to you." I had to look out the window because my eyes had become inconveniently full. "Thank you," I said. He said, "You strike me as a woman of considerable strength. I imagine you do not feel that right now, but it is there." "How would you know that?" I said. "You have known me for 20 minutes. Because you are sitting upright," he said. "Because you spoke clearly and without exaggeration. Because you are already thinking practically about tonight, instead of collapsing entirely. Most people would not recognize that in themselves as strength. But that is what it is." I did not know what to say, so I said nothing, and we drove. After a comfortable silence, he said, "I know a guest house. If you will allow me to suggest it." He named a place in the Melville area, run by a woman named Agnes who had operated it for many years. He said the rooms were reasonable, and Agnes herself was good company if you needed it, and knew when to leave you alone if you did not. I said, "That sounds exactly right." We arrived at a tidy double-story house on a quiet street, painted white with blue trim, a modest painted sign near the gate. Agnes herself came to the gate when Solomon hooted softly. She was a stout woman in her 60s, with a bright yellow head wrap, and the manner of someone who has been efficiently managing other people's comfort for so long it has become entirely natural. She saw Solomon's car and her whole face changed. She opened the gate before he had fully stopped. "Solomon, what a nice surprise, too long." Far too long. He embraced her briefly, the embrace of old familiarity. "Agnes, you look well. I have a guest for you, one night. She needs a good room and someone to make sure she eats." Agnes looked at me with immediate warm assessment. "Come, come, I have the corner room free. Come inside." She did not ask questions. I turned to thank Solomon and found him already lifting my suitcases from the boot. He carried them to the front door and set them down. "Solomon, I do not know how to thank you," I said. "You do not need to. At least let me pay you for the petrol." He stopped me gently. "No, please, it was nothing." He extended his hand. We shook formally and warmly at the same time. "Good night, Nomvula. Safe travels home tomorrow." He got in the car, he drove away. And I stood at Agnes's door watching the dark gray sedan disappear around the corner, feeling something I could not quite name. Not romantic, nothing like that. Just the specific, quiet astonishment of having been treated with unexpected dignity by someone who had absolutely no obligation to offer it. Agnes brought me tea without being asked. She sat across from me with the directness of a woman who contains neither judgment nor pity, only recognition. Man trouble, she said. It was not a question. Yes, I said. She nodded. Solomon always brings the lost ones. I looked at her. What do you mean? He notices people who need to be noticed. He has always been like that, even when we were young. Before he was Solomon who people make a fuss about. She said it in a way that closed the subject gently rather than opened it. Before he was Solomon who people make a fuss about. I turned that phrase over in my mind. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but something in her manner told me this was not the moment. She patted my hand, told me supper was at 7 if I wanted it, and left me to my tea and the garden below the window, roses, lavender, and a large old frangipani tree, going slowly dark in the evening. I sat there for a long time. I thought about Desmond, not with anger yet, that would come later. At that moment, it was more like standing in a room where a large piece of furniture has just been removed, the absence more prominent than the thing itself. I thought about what Solomon had said in the car. You strike me as a woman of considerable strength. I thought about why that had almost made me cry, not because it was flattering, but because I had not thought of myself that way in a very long time. Somewhere in 3 years with Desmond, I had slowly stopped measuring myself by strength. I had started measuring myself by usefulness. Am I being patient enough? Am I being supportive enough? Am I making it easy enough for him? And somewhere in all that careful accommodating, I had quietly misplaced myself. I thought about that for a long time, there by Agnes's window, with the frangipani becoming a silhouette below me. Agnes had made chakalaka and pap for supper, simple and perfect. There was one other guest, an elderly man named Mr. N. Tansey, visiting his grandchildren. He talked about them with the specific proud exhaustion of a man who loves them completely and is also 73 years old and not built for their energy. It made me laugh, a real laugh. The first one in what felt like days. I slept better than I had any right to expect. Agnes made me breakfast before I left, eggs, toast, strong sweet tea. She pressed a brown paper bag into my hands at the door. Fruit for the journey. I paid her for the room and then said, and the breakfast. She waved it away. Solomon would be cross with me if I charged you for breakfast. I said, Agnes, who is Solomon? What did you mean last night before he was someone people make a fuss about? She smiled. Slow and knowing, she said, ask him yourself if you see him again. I do not think I will, I said. She said, you might be surprised. I did not know what to make of that. I thanked her sincerely and took a taxi to the airport. At OR Tambo, I checked in without incident. My flight was at 2 in the afternoon. I had several hours. I found a seat in the departure lounge and sat with Agnes's paper bag of fruit and my own thoughts. I called Tandy. She answered on the second ring. When I told her what had happened, there was a silence. Then she said, come home, Nomi, just come home. I am coming, I said. And the money he owes you, I said, let it go. She said, are you sure? I thought about it honestly. Not yet. But I am going to decide to be sure, and eventually it will catch up with the decision. She laughed a little. That is very wise. I had help, I said. I was sitting in the departure lounge, perhaps an hour before boarding, an orange from Agnes's bag half peeled in my hand. A shift in the room's energy made me look up. Not a dramatic commotion. Just the specific way a space changes when someone significant has entered it. A slight reorientation of people nearby, a subtle straightening. At the far end of the lounge, a small group was moving through. Several people in suits. A woman with a tablet, walking quickly, speaking into an earpiece. A tall young man carrying a bag. And in the center of the group, wearing the same plain dark trousers and pale blue shirt from the day before. Walking at his own unhurried pace, while everyone else moved slightly faster around him, Solomon. The orange stopped in my hands. I sat very still. He had not seen me yet. He was speaking quietly to the woman with the tablet. She was nodding, occasionally typing something. And then, I watched this happen in sequence. Each detail landing separately. 3 airport employees in full southerly air uniform came from the direction of the gate and positioned themselves at a respectful distance behind the group. Not security, not crowd control, just present, attentive, the way employees position themselves around someone who matters. An older man in a southerly air management jacket came from the direction of the gate and walked directly to Solomon. He shook Solomon's hand with both of his. He spoke with the expression of someone addressing someone they deeply respect. Solomon nodded, said something brief, patted the man's shoulder once. The man beamed. The stylized bird logo on the car dashboard. Agnes's face changing when she saw the car at the gate. Before he was Solomon who people make a fuss about. Everything clicked into place at once. My hand was still holding the half-peeled orange, and I had completely forgotten it was there. Solomon's eyes traveled the room quietly, without performance, and they found me. He stopped. Just for a moment, he was completely still. Then he said something brief to the woman with the tablet. She nodded, and he walked away from his group toward me. He walked the way a man walks when he is not performing anything. He stopped in front of me. Nomvula. Solomon. He looked at the orange in my hand. Something in his expression was almost warm with quiet humor. Agnes's, I said. Of course, he said, and then, you slept. I did. Agnes was wonderful. She always is. I looked at him for a moment, then I said, I have a question. He said, I thought you might. Do you own this airline? He did not hesitate. He did not deflect. I founded it 31 years ago. It has grown somewhat since then. I looked at him. He looked back at me. You drove me from the airport in your own car. You found me accommodation. You carried my suitcases, and you never said a word. Would it have changed anything? He said. If you had known. I thought about that honestly. Yes, I said. I would have been self-conscious. I might have refused the help. Exactly, he said. Why did you help me? I asked. You did not know me. I could have been anyone. He was quiet for a moment. I have been a person who needed help at an airport and did not receive it, he said. A long time ago, in different circumstances, I have never forgotten how that felt. And I think when life gives you certain advantages, you do not waste them, you try to be useful with them. I sat with that. You could have told me afterward, I said, in the car. At Agnes's? Yes, he said simply. I could have, but then it would have become about that, about what I am, rather than about what you needed. And what you needed was simply to be treated like a person deserving of consideration. That required nothing more than that. I had to look away for a moment. When I looked back, I said, your staff. They all know you. They do, but you were dressed like a man who does not need to announce what he is. Yes, he smiled. And it was the same smile from the day before, the same unhurried, unperforming smile. I have worked very hard to remain that man. It is easy, when things go well, to begin believing that the business is who you are. I try to remember that I was Solomon long before any of this. The same way you were Nomvula long before everything that happened to you yesterday. Something in my chest loosened. That is a very good thing to remember, I said. He sat beside me. Not with ceremony, not calling anyone over, just sat, and we talked. Not about the airline, not about Desmond, not about any of it. We talked about Durban, the ocean there, which he loved. He said it was his favorite stretch of coastline in all of southern Africa. We talked about my mother, about what it means to spend a career in service of something larger than yourself. He talked about his wife, who had passed 4 years earlier, with a gentleness that told me he had made peace with the grief without making peace with the absence. He said, she used to say that dignity is not something you earn, it is something you refuse to surrender, no matter what anyone takes from you. I thought about the curb. About sitting on that suitcase with my back straight. I said, she sounds like my mother. He said, high praise, from everything you have told me I believe it is. Before we boarded, he stopped. He handed me a card. Plain white, his name, a number. Below the number, the name of the airline and a title, founder and chairman, Southerly Air Group. He said, I am going to make a note when I land. I want to send you something. Not charity, please do not interpret it that way. Something professional. I looked at him. What do you mean? You spent 22 years running a public hospital's administrative operations. I am always looking for people who understand what real resource management looks like. Not the theoretical kind, the kind that gets done with not enough money and too many competing needs. I am not looking for a new position, I said. Good, he said. People who are desperate for new opportunities often make poor decisions about which ones to take. I am simply going to send you some information. You can do whatever you like with it. He looked at me steadily. You came through something difficult yesterday. I watched the beginning of it. What I saw impressed me. I was sitting on a suitcase on a pavement, I said. Yes, he said, with your back straight. We looked at each other. Safe flight, he said. Safe flight, Solomon. And he walked through the gate. I sat in my window seat and watched Johannesburg fall away below me. I thought about 24 hours. 24 hours ago, I had been packing neatly in a hotel room, looking forward to going home with Desmond. And now Desmond was gone, and Solomon, whoever Solomon had turned out to be, was somewhere in the forward section of this same plane. And I was flying home feeling something I could only describe as lighter. Not healed, not over it, not suddenly fine, but lighter. As though something that had been sitting on me for a long time, something heavier even than Desmond, something heavier than the card and the borrowed money and the curb, had shifted. As though I had been reminded of something important about myself that I had been in danger of forgetting entirely. Tandy was waiting in the arrivals hall. She is shorter than me by several inches, and she held me for a long time without saying anything. Then she said, "Are you okay?" Not completely. "But I am going to be." She leaned back and looked at my face. "You look different. I feel different. Good different or bad different?" I thought about it. "I think they arrived together," I said. She shook her head slowly, picked up one of my suitcases, and said, "Tell me everything in the car. Let me tell you what happened in the months after. Not because it is the most dramatic part, because it is the most important. Desmond called, several times. First a message, then calls I did not answer, then finally, about 2 weeks after I got home, a voice message. 11 minutes long. I listened to it 3 times. He explained everything. The other woman, her name was Priya, had been in his life longer than he had admitted. He had been trying to end things with her while being with me, and he had failed at that, and he was sorry. He said financial pressure had made him make poor decisions. He said he knew that was not an excuse. He said he hoped I would find it in myself, one day, to forgive him. Then he said something unexpected. He said, "The worst thing I did, worse than all of it, was the way I left you, on that pavement, without dignity. You deserved better than that, Nomi. You always did." I sat with that for 3 weeks. Then I called him back. It was one of the hardest conversations I have ever had. Not because it was angry, it was not really. But because I had to say clearly what I had been half saying for a long time. I told him I accepted his apology. I told him acceptance was not the same as forgetting. I told him I would not be coming back. And then I said, "Desmond, you owed me honesty long before you owed me money. I needed you to be truthful, and you were not." Everything else follows from that. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I know, I am sorry." I said, "I know you are," and I meant it. He was sorry. Sorry people are not always good people, but I believed the sorrow was real, and that was enough for me to begin letting the anger go, if not the wound. I told him I wanted the money repaid within 60 days. It arrived within 30. I put it in the savings account I had maintained since I was 32. I did not celebrate. I did not feel triumphant, I just felt done. About 6 weeks after Johannesburg, a package arrived at my office. Not my home address, my office. Inside was a letter, handwritten, from Solomon. It said, "Dear Nomvula, I trust you arrived home safely, and that the difficult season you were navigating has begun to resolve itself, at least in part. I am writing, as I said I would, with some information that may interest you. There is no obligation attached to reading this. The Southerly Foundation, our charitable arm, is expanding its health sector work in KwaZulu-Natal. We are working with public hospitals in the region to improve administrative efficiency and resource management. We are looking for a project advisor. Someone who has lived this work, not studied it from the outside. I thought of you. The attached document outlines the role. It is part-time and advisory, and would not require you to leave your current position. I found this address through Agnes, who sends her warmest regards and says, and I quote her directly, "I told her she would hear from you. If you are interested, please contact the Foundation Director below. If you are not, please accept this letter simply as a note from someone who met you briefly and was glad to have done so. With respect and warm regards, Solomon Dube." I read the letter 4 times. I sat quietly, then I smiled. I told her she would hear from you. During the weeks I spent researching and deciding, I discovered something about Solomon Dube I had not known. He had not always been founder and chairman of anything. His father was a minibus driver. His mother sewed clothes from home. He had attended university on bursaries and part-time work. He had started Southerly Air with 1 leased aircraft and a business plan written by hand. 12 different investors had told him his idea was not viable. Banks had turned him down. He had been dismissed, condescended to, and overlooked by people who looked at him and saw only what he appeared to be. He had persisted. 31 years later, Southerly Air operated across southern and East Africa and employed nearly 3,000 people. I found an old magazine interview in which the journalist asked what he considered his most important professional habit. He had said, "Noticing what other people overlook. Overlooked routes. Overlooked markets, overlooked people." I sat with that for a long time. Overlooked people, sitting on a pavement suitcase with their back straight. I accepted the advisory role, part-time. Compatible with my existing work. I spent the first 3 months traveling to 4 public hospitals across KwaZulu-Natal, speaking with administrators, nurses, procurement officers, records staff. People like me, people who did the work in the background while others received the recognition. The report I wrote was apparently considered unusually practical and useful. The foundation asked me to extend the engagement. I did. My hospital manager was more supportive than I expected. She said, "Nomi, you have been underutilized for years. Go do this." I saw Solomon twice in that first year. Once at a foundation dinner in Johannesburg, formal, well-attended, Solomon very much the person people made a fuss about. But he saw me from across the room and made his way over and spent 15 minutes talking about the hospital work before anyone could interrupt. Those 15 minutes felt exactly like his car on the way to Agnes's guest house. Unhurried, genuine. The second time was in Durban. He was visiting the regional office and called me the day before. "I will be in Durban tomorrow. Would you show me the ocean? You said it was your favorite place." We walked along the beachfront for an hour. He took his shoes off on the sand, which I found unexpectedly charming. He talked more about his wife, about the early years with no money when she believed in him completely. He said she always said that dignity is not something you earn, it is something you refuse to surrender. I thought about the curb. "She sounds like my mother," I said. He smiled. "You have said that before." "It keeps being true," I said. We walked quietly for a while. Then he said, "How are you, Nomvula, honestly?" I thought about it properly before I answered. "I am finding my way back to myself," I said. "I think I had been slowly losing her for a few years, and I did not notice until she was almost gone." He nodded. "That is the most honest answer I have heard from anyone in a long time," he said. "We are friends. I want to say that clearly. Solomon Dube is 20 years older than me and loved his wife deeply and is not looking to replace her. And I am a woman who has learned the cost of moving too quickly toward something that only looks like safety. We are friends. The kind formed in unusual circumstances, and therefore, paradoxically, more real than many formed in ordinary ones. He has never once treated me as anything other than an equal. He has never made me feel that his help was charity or his friendship was patronage. He simply treats me the way he treated me that first afternoon, as a person deserving of consideration. That, I have come to understand, is the rarest thing in the world. I think about the curb sometimes. I think about sitting on that suitcase while the world moved around me, and I felt completely, utterly alone. And I think, If Desmond had done the decent thing and told me the truth in a quiet room. With kindness and time, which is what I deserved, I would have gone home and grieved and eventually moved forward. I would never have been at that curb. I would never have met Solomon. I am not saying I am grateful for the betrayal. I am not saying that. I am saying that sometimes the worst moment is the door through which something necessary enters. And the key that opens that door is not luck, or timing, or even circumstance. It is how you carry yourself when everything is falling apart, whether you remain honest about what you feel, whether you accept help with grace when it is offered by someone who expects nothing. Whether you see the person in front of you, not what they appear to be, but who they actually are. Solomon once said something to me, walking along that Durban beachfront with his shoes off and the Indian Ocean moving around us. He said, "The most dangerous thing a person can believe is that they already know what another person is worth. We make up our minds before we have read the first chapter. And we miss so much." I thought about Desmond, who had looked at me and eventually seen only inconvenience, and Solomon, who had stopped at the same curb, looked at the same woman, and seen a person, same curb, same woman, two entirely different ways of seeing. That is what I come back to, not the airline, not the foundation. Not the professional opportunities or the practical outcomes, just the willingness to truly see another person. To look at someone sitting on a suitcase in the afternoon heat and ask, gently, without agenda, without expectation, "Are you all right?" That is the smallest thing. It is also the largest thing. And it changed my life. If you are watching this and you are sitting at your own curb, not a literal one perhaps, but the kind we all find ourselves at sometimes, I want to say something to you directly. You are not invisible. You are not over. You are not defined by who left or what was taken or how you came to be standing in this particular place. You are defined by what you do next. By how honestly you face what has happened. By how clearly you see the people around you, not the ones you expected to matter, but the ones who quietly show up when they have no obligation to. I spent a long time looking for love and security in the directions I expected them to come from. And when something genuine finally came, it came from a direction I never anticipated. From a stranger at a curb, with a takeaway coffee cup he had forgotten to drink, and eyes that were simply honest. That is all. That is everything. My name is Nomvula Grace Dlamini. I am from Durban, South Africa, and I am, at 51 years old, more certain of who I am than I have ever been in my life, because a man who owned an airline chose to stop and ask. And the answer, eventually, turned out to be yes. If this story stayed with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And leave me a comment. Tell me which moment in this story you will remember. I read every single one.